everybody. Welcome to this edition of Lunch with Alum. We are really excited to welcome John Genga, class of 1979, to our interview today. I'm really excited for you guys to meet him. John has had a great legal career, went to Stanford, went to Michigan Law, has worked in lots of different areas of law, different types of firms, but now has his own firm, and he really specializes in IP, business law, and entertainment law. So, John, thank you so much for being here with us today, all the way from California.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for having me.
Of course, yes.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this is going to be fun. So, all right, so I like to start out these conversations. Take us back to like upper school you, kind of who you were in high school. What activities were you involved in? What sports were you playing? Kind of just give us a little glimpse into your world.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember that me. I think I was probably kind of a dork, but and I wasn't an athlete, although I loved the sports. I mean, I loved playing. Baseball was my favorite sport. I loved playing sports. Back in those days, it was a big deal to, I don't know if you still have this, but the juniors and seniors go to the commons room, and that was a big deal. And that's where I think, this whole social aspect really kind of kicked in for me, which was important to me. I started in 10th grade. I had been at the Detroit public schools through 9th grade. Okay. And I, probably didn't get to know that many people in the 10th grade as well as I could. Back then, I don't know how big the classes are now. We had 82 kids in my graduating class. And I knew all of them. I knew every one of them. And any one of them today, I could call up and, if I'm in their town or they're in my town, and I would see them, and it would be like,
for sure.
Even if we weren't great friends back then, I mean, we still knew each other, so we had a lot in common. And
I love it. Those were. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So yeah, that was the. Those are the things that stand out to me as some of the fun things. The other fun thing I loved, and this translated as after I went to Stanford. I went to like every football game. I loved going to the football games. I was in the band too, so sometimes the band would play at football games. So I did band, I did jazz band, and I'm sure now it's like way much more talent and sophistication than it was back when I was there. When I was there, the school put on its very first musical. I think either my junior or my senior year. So now it's probably like
the very first musical. Well, now we have like a whole conservatory program that you could be part of and things like that.
I'm sure, I don't get it. How big are the classes now? How big is the graduating class?
This graduating class is 173, and then a couple of years ago we had one that was even bigger than that, like into the 180s. So
that's double the size.
Yeah. So you mentioned this, you went to Stanford. Right. How common was that, kids from Country Day going all the way out to California? Like, what made you want to do that? And how did you decide to head out west?
Yeah, cluelessness was really the answer. I had no idea about anything. So I was actually the only one from my class that went to Stanford. I think only one other person, Robin Carr, went to California. She went to USC.
Okay.
And I just saw her, by the way, in Colorado, where she lives.
Very good.
And why did I go there? I had heard about it. I knew a guy who was 2 years ahead of me, a guy named Bruce Zivian, who went to Stanford. I was good friends with his brother. I was pretty good friends with Bruce too, but I was good friends with his brother Bob, who he didn't graduate from Country Day. He moved to Cranbrook the senior year, but good friends with Bob. So I talked to Bruce a lot, and I heard about Stanford, and there were very few people that even applied, I think, my year. There might have been one or two others that applied.
Okay.
But I'd never been out of Michigan even before.
Yeah.
I think I went once. Well, I had, I used to cross the border into Canada because I had relatives in Windsor. And I think I went once to Cedar Point. Been out of state. I went once I had a trip to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Only other time till that point in my life that I'd been in an airplane.
Wow. Okay. So this is like a big trip.
The second time on a plane was when I went to Stanford.
Wow, that's wild. Okay, so what was your experience like there? What did you make of this situation and the transition? I mean, it had to have been very different from what you were used to going to Country Day.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I
Yeah,
mean, the great thing about it was, it was rigorous, but I was used to that.
yep,
So that wasn't that hard. I mean, it was hard, but
yeah,
I
you
didn't
were
take
ready.
the getting used to. I knew how to deal with it. So that
Mhm,
that part was a good transition. So that there's no question that, you know, I owe everything to Country Day, really. I mean,
mhm,
there's no question that Country Day really prepared me for that. Um, the whole, moving into the dorms and being on my own, and that was obviously new. Being in California was wild. I had never seen an ocean before. The first time I
mhm.
saw an ocean was like, whoa, waves. I mean, I thought waves were things that the wind blew out on the top of the water,
Yeah,
but no. And
no,
saw my first avocado, saw my first artichoke. I learned a
wow,
whole new language.
culinary experience.
Yes.
Very good. Very
So,
cool. So what advice would you give to, we have some kids this year going to Stanford. What advice would you have for Country Day students who are about to become Stanford freshmen?
wow. It's probably so different from when I went there. I mean, it's so much more competitive now
Mhm,
to get in. I mean, it was fairly competitive then. I don't know what the numbers were. I think the numbers now are like 5 or 6%.
mhm.
Because so when I applied to college, I applied early action at Michigan.
Okay.
I got in. So by November or December, I knew I was at least at Michigan. So I go, okay,
Mhm,
well, I'll apply to Harvard and Stanford.
mhm.
And that's all I did. I applied to 3 schools. Now, I mean,
Okay.
I think it's pretty rare for kids to apply to fewer than, say, 10 schools, right? Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
Yeah, I would say so. Mhm.
My daughter applied, I think, to 11 or 12 school, but she got an ED at Boston, and she blew off the rest of her applications.
Okay. So she's going to be you.
She's going to BU in the
That's
theater
awesome.
school, which is almost as competitive as getting into Stanford, probably.
Wow.
I mean, the theater school
That's
is really good.
incredible.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
I love that. So when
so
is,
anyway,
yeah,
so
go ahead.
so yeah, so as far as what kids should expect at Stanford, I mean, geez, um, I don't know, just be open, I guess, is the thing, because you're going to meet so many cool people that have done so many cool things. I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, in retrospect, I thought all these kids were just like me at Stanford. They were a bunch of, but a lot of them turned out to be, I mean, uh, kid in my dorm is runs one of the biggest venture capital firms in Palo Alto now.
Wow.
His company was early investors in things like Facebook. I had I always say I wish I would
Wow.
have gone to some of my alumni stuff and I was in a fraternity. It turns out that a kid 10 years after I left was in the same fraternity. If I'd only gone to some of those events, he's Jerry Yang. He founded Yahoo. I mean, these
Wow.
are, I had a classmate who founded Intuit. I mean,
Yeah.
another one that was like an advisor to President Clinton. I mean, these people are just, I'm just blown away that I
Unbelievable.
was even, in the same. I mean, I don't know how I did it, but and it just, I guess I never thought anything other than, you know, this is where I should be and this is what I should do. And if I ever thought about the pressure or anything, I probably never would have done it. I probably never
Yeah.
would have been able to do it. But again, Country Day really prepared me for that.
Mhm.
I didn't think twice that I could, get in, number one, and number two, do the work and be successful. And
Wow.
lo and behold, it worked out
It
great.
worked out.
And I had a lot of fun. It's not a party school, but
Right. You had a
we
good
had
time.
fun. We had a good time. Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so you go through Stanford, you're hanging out with all these cool people, you're at the fraternity, you're studying, but now it's time to graduate. So you decide you're going to go to Michigan Law School. Had you already developed an interest in law at Stanford? Was that something that you had even before you got to college? So how did you decide you wanted to go to Michigan?
Well, first let me tell you how I decided to go to law school, because so I was an English major,
Mhm.
and I could have gone into teaching, which I would
Okay.
have loved. I think I would have been good. Um, you know, and I didn't know any lawyers, so the reason that I went into that I decided to go to law school, aside from what else does an English major do, um, if they're not going to teach,
Mhm.
is that I just thought um, it would be something that would always be challenging and new and changing, and that I wouldn't be bored. I mean, the last thing I wanted to do was do something where I'd say in 10 years, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And and it's kind of odd to hear that sometimes from lawyers, because a lot of lawyers really hate what they do.
Mhm.
I love what I do, because that's kind of how I've always approached the practice. Is that, even though any particular day or any night that you're in the office all night or something like that, or you know can be miserable. I
Mhm.
mean, in a macro sense, it's great, because you are always learning something new. The practice is changing, things are changing. For example, in my intellectual property practice, I've moved more into the tech and internet areas and away from entertainment. Um, and that's just because that was the direction that things were moving, and that's the
Mhm.
direction that I had. That's the place I just happened to be in the right place at the right time for those things to happen. So the great thing about Country Day, Stanford, Michigan Law School, is that they give you a great head start. They
Mhm.
they give after 10 years or so, it might not matter, but early on it does. I mean, so getting into the better schools, it does. It gives you a head start. It gives you
Mhm.
more opportunities early on. And the reason I
Mhm.
went to Michigan was because that was the best, least expensive school I got into. The only other school that I would have ranked with Michigan at that time would have been Columbia, which I got into.
Okay.
Um, the other ones, UCLA, Hastings, which is another UC law school.
Mhm.
I got into most law schools I applied to, other than I think Harvard and UVA. And so Columbia and Michigan were the top two. And I could get into Michigan as a Michigan resident.
Yep.
Michigan was comparably ranked at the time. After I got into Michigan, by the way, I heard horrible things about Columbia, which is
Good that
no,
you didn't
no.
go
I mean,
there.
I don't want to offend anyone who might have gone to Columbia, but Michigan was a great environment. It was
Mhm.
a very cooperative group of law students. We worked together very well.
Yeah.
My understanding at Columbia is it was a very cutthroat, competitive environment, which I would
Yeah.
have hated. And again, I mean, and each level that you go to, everyone gets smarter and better. And
Yes.
I mean, I did pretty well at Stanford. And then I get to Michigan, and then I was just blown away by some of these people. Some of these people who became Supreme Court clerks, and
Cool.
really smart people.
Yeah.
And you went to Michigan, so I mean, Michigan's just a great place to be. I mean,
It's great. It's a lot of fun.
it
Yes.
was terrific to be.
Very
That was a
dynamic.
great environment.
Mhm.
I wasn't. I didn't even apply to Stanford, because I didn't. I was uncertain enough that I wanted to go to law school, that
Okay.
in case I hated law school, I didn't want to hate Stanford as a consequence.
That
So
makes sense. That's a good
yeah,
way to think about it.
I know
So,
it's a random thing, but that was just my
yeah.
decision
I mean, it
process.
makes good sense. So after you graduate from Michigan, you worked at Jones Day. So do
Correct.
for people who are thinking about becoming lawyers, do you recommend having this sort of like big law experience as a way to begin your legal career?
Well, it worked for me. Um, I don't know that it's necessary, but again, it's like you know, it's the same Head Start kind of thing.
Hmm.
You have more opportunity. In my view, you have more opportunity if you start there. Then you can choose a less um, traditional corporate, whatever we're going to call it, path.
Sure.
Um, you know, um, so Yeah, I think it was great. I think it worked out well. You have that pedigree for a while.
Yeah.
Again, the pedigree only takes you so far. At some point, you have to,
Hmm.
you have to prove, who you really are and what you can really do. But it does help. So,
Okay.
and I think and I still have friends at Jones Day. In fact,
Hmm.
I shared a secretary with a guy that I just tried a couple of cases against, and
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So he's still there, and he won one and I won one, so we're even.
Okay. What kind of
So
work were you doing for them? Was it, were you in a specific practice area?
yeah, so back then, Jones Day didn't do it that way, although I ended up doing mostly litigation, which I enjoyed. I
Okay.
understood it. I understood the concept of someone wins, someone loses. I understood, I was helped by the concept of deadlines because I tend to work better when I've got a gun to my head.
Yeah.
So those were all things I enjoyed. I liked making arguments. I liked having to think on my feet. I got in to do so. Another advantage that I had, I think, is that I was working on some big cases where I got to learn from other lawyers. I got to participate in depositions and in hearings,
Yeah.
and do them myself from time to time, which was at
Okay.
a big firm was not that typical.
Yeah.
Um, so so those were some really good things about it. And then I ended up going to a firm that I would have probably spent the rest of my career at had the firm, you know, continued on, but we ended up losing our founders who went to different places. One became the
Okay.
COO of Sony Pictures, the other became the
Oh,
general counsel of the Walt Disney Company.
okay.
And then the firm just kind of what didn't have the cachet that it did. So I moved firms for a few years, and then I
Mhm.
started my own firm.
Okay. So the majority of your career, correct me if I'm wrong, has been focused in IP, entertainment law, business, litigation work of some kind, right?
Yeah, it's been all litigation. I would call it general business litigation with an emphasis in intellectual property
Okay.
and a familiarity with the entertainment, media, and tech industry. So,
Okay.
entertainment law is kind of a misnomer.
Hmm.
It's really just the practice of law in the entertainment business.
Got it.
So, it's really just a knowledge of how the business works. Um, Familiarity with the types of sort of contracts you run into, the types of disputes that happen, sort of the language that gets used. You don't need to learn all that. You don't need to get up to speed on that if you've been doing it for a while. So,
Right.
and the people in the industry, know if you know what you're talking about.
Hmm.
So, um, and at the studios, for example, they're very well credentialed people at the studios. I mean, there's
Hmm.
most of those people are Ivy Leaguers or, went to very good schools, and
Hmm.
a lot of them went to law school, including, CEOs of the companies went to law school. A lot of
Yeah.
them did.
So they know what's
So
going on.
yeah, so you can't BS your way through
I
if you don't
see.
know what you're talking about. So that became an advantage that I just happened to do a lot of work in that industry.
Okay.
But there's a couple of different schools of thought on how you do that.
Hmm.
Um, at the firm I was at that got me so much exposure to the industry, the philosophy was you become the best lawyer you can be first, and then you happen to participate in matters for entertainment clients. I mean,
Okay.
so if you're a transactional lawyer, you learn how to draft, you learn how to write contracts, you learn why certain provisions are in contracts. Some people that start out directly in the entertainment industry, they don't necessarily know, at least the feeling was at the firm I was at, that they don't necessarily know why they're doing what they're doing when they're doing a deal.
Hmm.
Why this provision's in there, or they don't, uh, if they're um, if they're just starting there. And so most of the entertainment firms in town that are considered the premier entertainment firms, most of them don't hire directly out of law school.
Okay.
they want you to get some experience first, being a lawyer.
Yeah.
So
Okay. That's really interesting. I hadn't really thought of it like that, where they want you to kind of like have an area where you're really like, sound, and then you
right,
can sort of apply that to
right,
what they're looking for. That's really
yeah.
interesting. So what
And
have been some of your favorite cases or projects that you've worked on over your career?
well, I represented Vanna White in a very famous case that is in all the law school case books now.
Wow.
Um, it's what's called a right of publicity case. It was the
Okay.
use of her image or likeness to sell a product without her permission, but the likeness was not a human likeness, it was a robot, and it
Wow.
was made to look like her. Not, I mean, not really, but just it was just a metallic object that was sort of had her sort of bronze tan color and her body proportions and
Hmm.
her, and it had a wig on that looked like her and standing next to a letterboard turning letters.
Hmm.
Who else could it have been besides Vanna?
Exactly.
So that became a famous case, and that got us some notoriety. That got me some notoriety, and I did a lot of great copyright cases. I did a great case involving the film Die Hard. I've probably seen Die Hard about 50 times.
Okay.
It's still one of my favorite movies. If I flip channels late at night and I come across Die Hard, I go, oh damn, I gotta watch it.
Wow. Okay. Still have love for Die Hard, even though
I
you
love that
worked
movie.
on
Yeah,
the case.
it's a
Okay.
great movie. And one of the terrific case I worked on had to do with the rights to James Bond. When I took this case on, and I was one of many people on the case, but I was the what you'd call the junior partner on the case, so I did all the work. I had
Right.
never
Exactly.
seen a single James Bond movie when I took that case on, and but it involved very obscure issues of copyright law under what's called the 1909 Copyright Act versus the 1976 Act, which is what we operate under now. It involved, concepts of joint authorship because the parties that we took, so we represented Sony Pictures.
Okay.
Sony acquired rights from a fellow named Kevin McClory. McClory co-wrote and directed Thunderball, which was to have been the first James Bond movie. Now, if you know anything about James Bond, you know that Thunderball is actually the third movie, as it turned out.
Okay.
And our theory was that, and the other side claimed that McClory had no rights.
Okay.
And it was the case was like a law. It was like a massive law review article. The whole case was really challenging, really interesting. Went
Okay.
up on appeal a couple of times. We got some published decisions, and I got to depose the heirs of Ian Fleming in London.
Wow.
And it was just fun. It was just a fun case, great
Yeah.
case. It was intellectually challenging. I mean, I would just talk to my opposing counsel. We would just talk back and forth about these issues, arguing with each other, but
Right.
smart people. These are smart people I'm dealing with, and and we would just talk about the case all the time. And
That's so fun.
it was fun. It was a great case, and we ended up settling the case. Sony actually got paid not to make a movie, and
Wow.
poor McClory turned down apparently like $30 million, and then he died.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
He died,
That's
and
quite the story.
I think his kids never forgave him.
Oh yeah.
That guy
I
was a
mean,
character, by the way.
oh, I bet.
Story guy. Yeah. So anyway, so there are a lot of great characters in that, in those cases. And then I moved to like doing things like I don't know. I do work on the internet. I do domain name disputes.
Okay.
I've been involved in the rollout of, how it used to just be .com and .gov and
Yeah.
whatever, .net. Now it's .everything. Well, I
Right.
was right involved in that. I represented the company that has the most .anythings of any. They had 300. They bought 325 of them, and there's a whole procedure for resolving disputes concerning these new top-level domains. And we litigated about 50 cases in the course of a year on behalf of this client.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really fascinating, and it was really all just litigation. And it involved, it involved the internet, but you know, you may need to know a couple of terms here and there. You need to know kind of how the internet works a little bit, but it's really just litigation. And that's the other cool thing about litigation, in particular to me, is that you get to learn about a lot of different businesses. And that's another way to me, even as the law changes and as technology increases and new things develop, you get to learn about different businesses. You learn about, I've done things from, this top-level domain thing to entertainment industry stuff to, I don't know, credit card processing, which is pretty dry, and biotech stuff, and you learn a little bit about these things. It's kind of fun.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I've noticed that my whole family is lawyers except for me, and my mom knows something about everything. She's a litigator also. So it's very.
Where does she work? Is she?
She has her own practice. Deborah Gordon Law. She does civil rights. And
she's
things
a real
like
lawyer,
that.
Yeah.
So very interesting. But okay, so sitting where you are today, this is my last question, I promise. Sitting from where you are today, what advice would you give to your 12th grade self, or any 12th grader who's about to be graduating, going off to college, in this environment?
I was so clueless in 12th grade, but I think it helped me, actually. So I wouldn't give myself any different advice than, different advice. I wouldn't tell myself to have done anything differently. There's a few things that I might do differently that I think about it, but then I think, well, I'm here now and I really like where I am now. So if I had to do over again, might I have, I don't know, taken a year off? Yeah, definitely would have taken a year off between college and law school, or maybe even high school and law school and college. By the way, are kids doing gap years out of country day?
Not so much.
That's too bad.
Not so much right out of high school. I'm not familiar with anyone who's really done that.
Yeah, no, even at Harvard Westlake now, out here.
They do that?
Yeah, people are doing that.
I think it's so smart.
Yeah, these kids are going to live to be 100 years old. They got time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, so I went right through. So I would have done that differently had I known, but in retrospect, like I said, if I look back on it and say, here's where I am now, had I done something differently, I might not be where I am now, which I'm happy to be where I am now. I have 2 great kids. I enjoy what I do. So I guess I would say, my advice would be, I guess, to maintain the sense of wonder that, you ever look at toddlers, you look around and everything's so cool to them.
Yeah.
That's how I felt when I went to Stanford. It's whoa. That would be my advice.
Yeah.
Maintain your humility, maintain a little bit of cluelessness, maintain some openness to learning new things. Don't think you have all the answers, because you don't.
That's great advice.
And do some stupid things, and and you'll bust you. Oh wait, you froze on me.
Oh, hello? Yeah, that's okay. Am I back now?
Did I freeze? Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm getting a message saying my internet connection is unstable.
Oh.
Okay, I'm unstable. So.
Okay. Well, that is all great.
So that would be my advice. That's how I would tell myself not to do anything differently, I think.
That's awesome. I love it.
Just stay clueless, because the cluelessness helped me. Because had I realized anything that I was really getting into, I would have been terrified, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love that. I love the parting advice, which is to stay clueless. Thank you so much, John. This was so fun. I loved talking to you. I really appreciate it. And then if students want to reach out to you or get in touch, is it okay if I provide your
My email,
contact
my
info?
cell phone, anything. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, awesome.
Happy to do it.
Thank you so much.
All right.